Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this morning I am joined by Kev McCluskey. You are dialing in from Budapest, Kev. I think that is an indication of the pool of Celtic this derby. People will be tuning in from all over the globe. So let us know in the comment section where you're watching the game today, where you're watching Acsom today. Let us know from the Himalayas to Holbeath. I'm pretty sure people will be tuning in to Celtic versus Rangers at Ibrox. Kev, the teams are out. I have them across the ticker tape at the bottom of the screen, the Celtic 11. Anyway, let me know your initial thoughts about that starting 11.
Yeah, first of all, Paul, thanks very much again for having me on a match day. Really looking forward to this one. I think it will be a really interesting, intriguing game. I think you see I'm dialing in from Hungary, but we've got contributors on Acsom as well, and we've got Japan, New Zealand, Australia. It just kind of shows not just the reach of
Swindon.
Acsom, but the reach of Celtic Football Club and Swindon as well. I can't forget Brian.
Don't forget Brian.
Yeah, can't forget him because I usually share the same opinions as him as well. So there's no excuse for forgetting Brian. But yeah, it shows the appeal of I'd say of Acsom that people are willing to contribute and listen in, but mainly of Celtic that we have such a global reach. And on days like this, kind of there will be pockets of Celtic fans all across the globe getting up at whatever time it is in their time zone just to tune in to watch the game. And yet, the first thing obviously they'll do on the day is look at the team, and I think you look at that team that we've put out today, got out there on paper. I think that's a really, really strong team that we've got there. It's for the first time this season we've almost got a full strength team out for this match. You know, previous Glasgow derbies this season we've been missing Carter Vickers. He's come back in for this one. Unfortunately, McGregor's dropped out, but other than McGregor being missing, I think you look at that team and you think it's extremely strong. There's a lot of strength, a lot of talent in there. And if we're allowed to play, if we're allowed to make this game a game of football, that team is, in my opinion, good enough to take it to Rangers and good enough to come away with the 3 points. They've done it before with a weaker team. So let's have lots of confidence going into this right now that we can come away with the result that we need and we want from this match.
No, 100%, Kevin. And for anyone who's not seen the team, we're going to run through that in some detail. We are on a little bit earlier today because such is the occasion, Kev. I messaged you last night, said, do you fancy going on an hour before kickoff? Plenty to discuss. And I was so organised, actually, I had the stream set up last night or the early hours of the morning. Anybody else struggling to sleep last night? Absolutely. Before I do that,
I'm getting woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning my time by messages from Mr. Paul John Dyke saying, would you mind going on a half an hour earlier tomorrow? And then an hour later, I get the invite to the actual show at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So,
apologies, mate.
This
I'm not one of the annoying mates that like send you dodgy messages at that time in the morning because they're on the scoop, right? I do it because I'm thinking about Celtic and the stream the next day. That's my life. I'm sorry if it sounds boring. But here we go. We've got lots of comments coming in. Keep them coming in. We're going to run through the Celtic side. But before I do that, I must mention the scenes at Celtic Park yesterday. So often, Kev, we're on the post-match streams and we talk about the impact of the Celtic support. And we know, obviously, there are going to be no Celtic fans other than those wearing the green and white hoops and those in the technical area in Ibrox today. But yesterday, you've seen those incredible scenes up at Parkhead where obviously around what used to be the old school, which is now the players and staff car park, the Celtic fans assembled. There was pyro, there was chanting, there was banners. It was absolutely stunning, wasn't it?
It's incredible. Yeah. I mean, my little monologue, if you want to call it that, at the beginning, there was talking about the widespread, the worldwide reach of the Celtic support. And although that was just concentrated into the car park at Celtic Park, again, it just shows you how much that club and these players mean and the team means to the support, that they've taken their time out on a Saturday afternoon, to go up to Celtic Park to do their bit because they can't be in the stadium on the day of the game. Like we talk about the fans being the 12th man for every club. On a game like today, you want them in the stadium because 5 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go. You imagine Rangers piling on the pressure. You want those fans behind the team, just urging them on, urging Liam Scales to go and win that header and make the clearance. And those things inspire the players. Fans know they can't do that today. The only way they can influence the game is pre-match. So going out to Celtic Park and again just showing that support. Like, if we can't be with you in the stadium, we'll be with you every step of the way until we get there. And I think if you're a player, you know what it means to play for a club like Celtic anyway. I would think it's sold to you when you join the club. Then you get moments like this, and if you've got any wavering doubt about what it means, I think those moments just like hammer it home again. Right, it's a massive club. It means so much to so many people. And if that show yesterday doesn't inspire the players to go out and put on a performance today, nothing will.
No, you're right.
Not win the game today, but they can put on a performance that can make you proud because of that display last night.
Well, you know what? I remember the Aberdeen game, the Scottish Cup final that started that run of trebles. You know, that the invincible treble was completed that day, and people will remember the incredible scenes, the goal from Tommy Rogic, the much missed Tommy Rogic, the celebration of Craig Gordon dropping down to his knees, Kev, and you saw the Celtic fans going absolutely wild at Hampden that day and going over to get the applause of the Celtic support. And Kevin Miles, who's been on Acsom a couple of times, he, of course, wrote and recorded the Celtic song, Celtic, My Heart and My Soul. And you can see him jumping towards the Celtic players. It's a phenomenal, absolutely incredible image. And I remember afterwards, players being spoken about regarding the preparation for the game, something I'm always interested in, actually. You know, how do you prepare for the game? What does the gaffer do? How does he settle the nerves? Which players in the dressing room, Kev, are the guys that are the leaders, the go-to, that are walking about the place with a presence that you think to yourself, we've got this, because the confidence oozes out of some guys like that. So I'm always interested to know about the lead up to these games. And they were talking about the fact that Brendan had gone to the trouble of getting messages from family members, because what happens is, of course, you're in a hotel the night before the game. And I've spoken, obviously, to Celtic players throughout the ages, and back in the day, used to take them down to Seamill Hydro, Kev, and that was the traditional place where Celtic would base themselves a day or two sometimes before a big game. And, you know, the guys would say a big part of that was because you imagine 24 hours before any game, never mind the big games, and, you know, you've got maybe kids keeping you awake, you've got other commitments within your kind of domestic setting. And I always remember people saying, and you've got people phoning you and champing your door looking for tickets for games like this as well. So they get you away, they take you to a hotel, and it's all about focus, tuning in, Kevin. I remember the story going that Brendan Rodgers had organised for some message. It sounds like something you would see in the Big Brother house, a wee message for the family to G you up. But after the game, I remember speaking to Ali Begg, big Aberdeen fan, used to work for Celtic TV, Man U TV, and was also a member of Bad Boys Inc. Got to throw that in there as well. And he was talking about the fact that, you know, even if it's tiny, and I'm talking minuscule margins, Kev, that whatever was said in the dressing room, or whatever that message contained from your daughter or your wife, or, you know, someone that is going to give you that extra margin, that could give you the impetus, near the end of the game, just to have that wee bit more energy, that wee bit more drive. And I think that when you see the players up at the park yesterday, and the fans, you know, the positive energy, the dynamic of that, and people, you know what it's like on social media, they're going on about, you know, Brendan playing a part of that. Brendan's coming out and saluting his fan base. And it was natural. And, you know, if he hadn't done it, it wouldn't have had the same impact. And you imagine being a player in that bus, ready to go to the hotel, and you've never played in this fixture. And we know that there's somebody starting today who's never played in this fixture, and Nicholas Kuhn. And you're looking at the window, and I'll tell you what, if there was any doubt in your mind, Kev, what this fixture means to so many people around the world, there'll be no doubt now.
Oh, absolutely not. And Kuhn's one of the players I'm thinking about, you know, with how that's going to impact on him. Like, as I say, he's been sold on Celtic because it's a massive club. It's a huge step up from Rapid Vienna. It's, you know, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. we have a story that we tell to sell the club to get players to come, and they'll buy into it to a degree, probably, but how much we don't know, right? Then you get something like that yesterday. He's sitting on the bus. Now, you can imagine that he's sitting there and it's just the goosebumps as he sees that. There's something in the pit of your stomach that kind of swells up when you get that, when you see the reaction of the fans. You just know, like Tommy Burns said, it's the old line, but you've got to say it, you're playing for a people and a cause. And you see that. You just know that it's so much more, like you say, to people. So yeah, he's one I think that will really take something from it. And watching him develop from those first few games where he was a wee bit iffy, performance is not great, to what he's done over the last few matches, I think he's the type of player that will thrive on it as well. I've seen lots of comments that he could be one of the key players for us today, but he could be one of those guys that's like a rabbit in the headlights because it's such a big occasion. I don't see him being like that. I see there's something in there. There's a mental toughness, and I'm hoping there is anyway. I'm speaking from how I would like it to be, but I imagine it's something that yesterday just again hammers it home to him exactly the size of the club that he's joined and what it means to the fans, the supporters, to go and put in a performance and win the game. But because we've got loads of time today before the match, I'm going to tell you a wee story, Paul, as well. When you mentioned the Scottish Cup final, the one against Aberdeen, it starts it all off.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you when we won that game?
I wasn't at the game. I couldn't
You
get
weren't
a
at the
ticket.
game?
I wasn't at the game.
No, neither was I. I was in the fan zone outside Honved's old stadium, the old Bojic Arena, watching the game on my mobile phone on a dodgy stream, burning up mobile data like crazy. And unbelievable. This is the day of that game was the final day of was it 2016-17? I can't actually remember the year now. It was the final day of the league season in Hungary. It was winner takes all between Honved and Mulvideo, as they were at the time. Atmosphere outside that ground was just electric anyway. But there's a certain point when there's just one daft Scotsman just starts running up and down shouting Rogic at the top of his voice, just in
Was that you?
fan concourse. It was, yes. 10 points for guessing that one. So yeah, that was me going mental there. On the day, Honved win the game 1-0. So they win the league. It's the first league title in the 25 years, 27 years, something like that. It's the most polite reaction to winning a league title I think I've ever seen. There were a few cheers. There was a party afterwards, but actually in the stadium it was kind of polite round of applause and congratulations. The guy that was the most daft at the whole day was me when Celtic won, and I'm like thousands of miles away from where Celtic are playing. I actually met that day in the stadium afterwards a guy called David Lanzafame, who was Honved's top striker. And I was just bold enough, because I was quite drunk at the time, to be fair, I was bold enough to go over and start talking to him. And he asked what I was doing here because of obviously the Scottish accent, and told him the story, told him I'm a Celtic fan, and he just couldn't believe that I would be there over actually being in a pub to watch a Celtic game, to watch that game. So even he, as somebody else, this Italian football player, it's not a surprise, knows of Celtic, but knows of the club, knows of how big it is. Our reach is massive. And that's one of those days that'll always stick with me. It's like the JFK moment. Where were you when Rogic scored the goal?
Yep.
There's thousands of fans can say they were in the stadium. I was outside Bojic going daft, and then chatting up Honved's star striker after the match with tales of Tom Rogic.
Well, I remember exactly where I was during that day, the moment Rogic scored the winner. But I remember even more clearly being at the games that followed. That I always associate the trebles with the Scottish Cup finals. That's how I remember. That's how I compartmentalise them in my own mind. So the Aberdeen season and then the Motherwell season. So I was at the Motherwell game with Kev Graham. I always remember that. We always go on about the fact that we spent a wee bit of time with Marvin Compere that day during the game. And I remember that was the double.
The lesser spotted.
Lesser spotted. That was the double treble. The double treble, right? And again, we couldn't get tickets for it, and we had to do that whole prawn sandwich brigade to get into the game. Kevin and I, by the way, right? Kev was wearing a tie. He might deny it, he was. And we were at that game. And
was it not just a silk scarf?
a cravat. And I remember it was a really, poignant scene after the game, because we had both, and we go on about this all the time, both got our first Celtic season tickets, Kevin Graham and I, during the Hampden season. And I know a lot of people did, because Celtic never really pushed season tickets up until that point. And I remember saying to Kev, where was your seat, mate? Where was your seat in 1994? And he was pointing his seat out, and I was pointing mine out. And it was just like, right, just remember how far we've come since then, man. That's what we were trying to do. We were trying to soak it up. The following treble, the Hearts game, I remember sitting next to a great Celtic man, a great Celtic voice. I was 2 seats down from Terry Dick. Terry, of course, his father was Glenn Daly, whose Celtic song is played before every game at Celtic Park. And his wee friend had been at Lisbon. He'd been at the final in Lisbon, right? And I remember he was sitting throughout the whole game, couldn't get up, had a wee walking stick and all the rest of it. And at the end of that game, he was crying, Kev, right? And I was like, this is a guy that's seen us being the champions of Europe. And he understood what winning 3 trebles on the bounce was. He knew what it meant. And, that hit home for me. The following one, of course, we covered it during the pandemic. The way that worked, again, against Hearts, penalty shootout and all the rest of it. And I remember we were in the studio covering that one. But yeah, these are the moments. And today, there might be moments like that, because you can remember and you can recall just about any moment in your Celtic supporting life, either being there to enjoy it with fellow Celtic fans in the stadium, in a boozer, in a house, somewhere, Kev. And in the last 4 years, you and I, more often than not, have enjoyed it on this particular show. We have looked for ways of somehow broadcasting nearer the stadium on match day, Kev, because then that would allow me to dart off 5 minutes before the game and actually go get the action. You could maybe run the half-time one for me, and then I'll come back at full-time. So we're looking at ways to do that. Hopefully there will be some kind of space in and around the park. It certainly won't be in the park, but in and around that area where we can do the old match day stuff. So we're looking into that. We're always looking to improve Acsom. And I've got a big meeting on Tuesday in Glasgow. Hopefully that will result in an announcement in relation to what we're doing as we move forward with Acsom as well. Always looking to develop and improve. Now, Kieran, morning, boys. Bit gutted about Callum McGregor, but still pleased with the team. As you will see from the ticker tape underneath, the subs are Bain, Ida, Yang, Novroski, Bernardo, McGregor, Forrest, Ralston and Welsh. Now, from McGregor to Ralston, I'm going to start there. Seems a bit unusual. We'll come back to the start 11. McGregor, Forrest, Ralston. Now, during the week, we were talking about the importance of McGregor just being in the squad, Kev. The fact that at that point, I think we had maybe accepted he wouldn't be starting. And then you see the training ground pictures on the Friday, and you think to yourself, oh, there might be a chance. But it felt at that point like you're rushing him. So he's fit, but he's no match sharp, right? And I think when you then listen to Brendan Rodgers' comments on the Friday where he's asked the question, that was more or less what he said. And you're thinking to yourself, right, he's not going to make it. And then the big question pushed towards who plays in his place, and we'll come to that. But my point was this, Kev. He might not make it on the park to start the game. But in terms of the influence, getting picked up in the schoolyard outside Celtic Park, the old schoolyard, getting picked up there, going to the hotel, every part of that prep, just to have Callum McGregor as part of the team, even though he's on the bench, is absolutely huge. And the reason I say McGregor, Forrest and Ralston is because you've got 3 guys there. And I know Ralston's not on the same kind of page when it comes to the amount of appearances he's played for Celtic, but these 3 guys, they've been at Celtic since they were kids. They know the fabric of the club inside and out. And you're talking about new guys sitting on that bus looking out going, wow, it's just a game of football. No, it's no. They're the 3 kind of players for me, along with a couple of others, that I think are absolutely key when it comes to big games like this. They might not start, Kev, but see in your team, they're your heartbeat of your team.
Absolutely. And it's probably more so for a club like Celtic. Do we need to have guys like these around the squad, even if they're not playing week in, week out? Because of just but we've spoken about, the global size of the club, what it means to the supporters and the fan base, that it is, to use the quote of it, it's more than a club. You need guys around there that have been brought up in the traditions of the football club to know it inside out, to know what it's like to play in and win these kind of games, these big games. That experience and the knowledge is invaluable. If you look at Callum McGregor, I mean, when you're talking before again about that Scottish Cup final game, and who are the leaders there? Well, McGregor's one of the leaders in this team, and I'm sure there's the videos of one of the cup finals, might have been last season's or the season before, when he's going around the dressing room just geeing everyone up, and that's what he does. And he'll have been doing it on the bus yesterday, just getting players in the right frame of mind for the game, calming players down during the week, probably because he knows how you do a proper build-up to this match. It's not like any other game. You can't really approach it the same way. So he'll be getting players drilled for the whole week to be ready for this one. And yeah, his influence, in one sense, it almost doesn't matter if he's starting or not. It's just having him there. Like, if he's in the team to begin with, he gives everyone a massive, massive lift. It gives us as the fans a lift. You've got your captain back. It gives the players a lift. You've got that inspiration on the park with you. This isn't a game, though. And then John Hughes said this one during the week. It's not a game for passengers. It's not a game for anyone that's not fully fit. If you've got any doubts about a player, I mean, I was more inclined to play Callum McGregor even at 80% match fit. But I think John's probably right. You don't risk him. His influence can almost be as much off the field as it is on the pitch in the lead up to this game.
Mm-hmm.
You've got now fairly settled midfield, or midfield duo anyway, with Iwata and O'Reilly, and it's always been who's the third player. Hatate's a great third player to have coming in. So you're not disrupting the midfield, you're not adding in the risk of an unfit player, but what you've got is somebody that's on the bus on the way to the hotel last night, someone that's around the dinner table and the breakfast table this morning, somebody that's in doing the warm-up today in the dressing room, going to actively participate in the game. He's not just there to make up the numbers. And that alone will inspire the players. I'm sure it's massive to have that. And it's the same then with the likes of James Forrest and Tony Ralston, because again, they just know the club. You need those guys around to welcome new players in, to teach them about the traditions of the club, what these games mean. Forrest gets a lot of criticism, especially when it comes to these games, because apparently he doesn't have a great record at Ibrox. But you would trust him to come on and do something today.
Mm-hmm.
He's got it within him. He's scored goals against Rangers before. He's scored goals away from home in Europe before. The match doesn't faze him. You can imagine he can come on and just, again, influence the game with his presence. And then Tony Ralston, again, is the other one that you mentioned. Let's go back to the very first game between the clubs this season.
Oh, yeah.
Ralston is over the scales, and Lagerbielke at the end of the game pulls them together, gives them the big hug, and is shouting in their faces to tell them what they've actually achieved, because he knows, they might not know, or Lagerbielke might not know just how big an achievement that was. Ralston made sure they knew. So to have those guys around, it is massive, and it might not always be what they can do on the pitch. It's what they can do off the pitch to get other players in that right frame of mind to go out there and do the job this afternoon.
Yeah, it has. It's taken me back to a lot of these tales that people tell you about the old C-Mill days, where they would drive down there, and then, part of the process was they would have a bounce game at some stage out the front. Now, I've never actually been to C-Mill Hydro, right? But I've seen plenty of pictures, and it's just basically a grassy area where there's a path right through the middle, Kev. So they would play left to right, and the halfway line was the path. These are professional footballers, right? Preparing for big European games and games against Rangers. And there's a path. There's actually paving stones right down the middle. And then there was various traditions, like they would play the old guys against the young guys, etc. You've maybe heard the Bobby Lennox, Tommy Burns story as well, but I'll leave that for another day. And if you lost the game, you had to jump the wall and get in the water. That was your forfeit if you were in the losing team in the water. Professional footballers, Kev, right? And then there was a few stories as well about there was a particular room at C-Mill that the smokers would go to So anybody who liked a wee cigarette here or there would go to a specific room. Don't know if it was because of, who knows, fire alarms or whatever, but they got away with going for a wee smoke to settle the nerves. And then up to the ground, it was about singing. So you're going from Seamill to Celtic Park, and they would have a sing-song on the bus, Kev. And you've got Jimmy Johnson down the front of the bus singing, and Jock Stein singing songs going up to Celtic Park. Unbelievable, incredible memories. The way Celtic used to do things, sometimes I think it's part of the fairy tale, isn't it? You know, with the Barrafield training ground, Seamill Hydro, painting the Puma football boots with Adidas stripes before the European Cup final. I love all that stuff, right? But then you fast forward to now, and it's very much to protect the players, of course. And I think most of the people who are on social media, and many who were up in the early hours of the morning this morning, I'm going to bring some of you guys up because the time is on your comment. You would have known that there was a wee bit of trouble in Glasgow last night as well. So hopefully everybody's okay. Nobody has suffered anything serious with the so-called running battles. I only seen the footage like everybody else, Kev. I'm not sure exactly what's been happening. But before we move into the rest of the team, I want to give a big shout out to someone who I've known for a long time now, Tom Campbell. Now, Tom Campbell is probably on that shelf more than anybody else behind me because he's written a number of classic Celtic books. And in fact, for me, he has written the Bible of Celtic books. He co-wrote it with Pat Woods, The Glory and the Dream. Tom Campbell is 90 years of age. He is celebrating this weekend his 90th birthday. Ottawa, CSC, he was a founding member, and I seen a brilliant picture of him yesterday blowing out the candles. Unbelievable, Tom. Superb guy, an incredible brain, and hopefully the team give you a cracking 90th birthday present today. Now, the first 10 minutes, says Magnet67, are crucial. Kev, you and I have covered maybe not every game together, but the vast majority of the games together this season.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think one of the big frustrations we've seen this season, Kev, is sometimes getting into gear. You know, sometimes it happens at half time. We've spoken about being a Jekyll and Hyde side this season. Sometimes you see it in the same game. You get a good half of football. Sometimes it's in the second half. I think Magnet's spot on here, and I don't think it's a cliche. It is about the intensity from the kickoff, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I don't know. We might speak about this later on because I've got your notes, of course, of one of the things you want to talk about. But kind of was the managers, and you see it in their press conferences. So I don't tend to watch Philip Clement's press conferences very often, but I'll make an exception when it comes up to these games, or I'll see more of the clips. And you see the way that he's talking; it's all emotion and it's all about going out with gusto and trying to kind of blow Celtic away. And that's exactly what I expect them to try and do in the first 10, 15 minutes of the game. It's what they've done the last 3 or 4 Glasgow derbies at Ibrox, where there's been no Celtic fans, or limited Celtic fans in the stadium. They've tried to make the most of that home advantage, the full stadium of Rangers fans, and create something really intimidating, which is within their rights to do, of course, right? But we need to stay solid for that first 10, 15 minutes. It is a cliche, but it's a very true kind of cliche to put forward for this game. First 10, 15 minutes are massive. They'll come out the traps and they'll want to, as I say, blow us away. If we're solid, if we're compact in that time and we keep them at bay and we don't give very much away, don't concede a goal, there's every chance that they'll start to get a wee bit nervous quite early because it's not in their game plan to not be ahead early, I don't think. And we've done it before. We've done these games where we've been able to soak up a bit of pressure and then we can hit in the break. We did it in the first game. Kyogo's goal was sublime and it was probably our first chance in about 25 minutes in that match.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the opening of this game is huge because you get the impression that if they do come out and get an early goal, I hate to say it, it could be a very long afternoon for us because the cauldron atmosphere that it will create. If we keep them quiet for that 10, 15 minutes, we nullify them, we make the game really boring, which is something that Brendan's teams have been good at doing, then we stand a really good chance. And I think from our side, that's possibly the game plan. Just make the game as boring as possible for the first 10, 15 minutes, and then start to get a foothold in it and press them back and exploit the gaps that they will leave. Because again, the longer it goes at 0-0, I feel the more desperate they become to score, and we can start to pick them off.
Couple of things from that. The best one is you've paid Brendan Rodgers the ultimate compliment there, that he's very good at making the game boring. He's very good at that, Kev. What's the XB? Is it an XB? Yes, he's very good at that.
Expected boringness. Aye.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about the gaffers. Let's get a few comments in first. John Mullane, let the green reign supreme over Snake Mountain. I am delighted that more often than not the comments come in with the correct Masters of the Universe terminology when referring to Ibrox as Snake Mountain. Thank you very much for getting it right. Who's the snitch? Hail, hail, gentlemen. Good morning. Get your phones ready to phone the cops. Call the cops, as Sean Ryder used to say. And yeah, that is taken into a different discussion in relation to the hate bill and obviously what you can and can't say at the football. And let's be honest, Kev, it's one of these situations that has raged on for many, many years and will continue to do so, I think. And I was spoken to and asked the question over the weekend in relation to the rivalry between the two teams and the religious divide which has existed for generations. And the questions were being asked from the outside looking in. So the first interviewer was German, and the second one was from New Zealand. And so what they're doing is they're tapping into a rivalry, Kev, that they've read about and they've seen on YouTube and on documentaries, etc. And they're trying to get down at the bottom of it. And a big question was around the way that the fans have been treated in recent times. Obviously, there was the introduction of the Offensive Behaviour at the Football Act, and there was the revocation of that particular act, which was historical in Scottish law. And there's always been the breach of the peace with various aggravators, should you need to arrest anyone. But obviously this new hate bill that's been introduced has been on everybody's minds. Everybody's been talking about it. And I think that it's one of these things that week in, week out, you hear these chants at Ibrox, chants of hating a group of people, a section of society. And it will be very interesting to see. Although I'm pretty sure some of the broadcasters will be turning the volume down as to what the chants will be today. And we'll be listening to that very, very clearly and carefully, because it's one of these things, Kev, I think that has been, it's been a situation where people have turned a blind eye to it. In the media, people don't talk about it. It's almost as if it's been normalised. And I do think it's something that has to be tackled head on. Now, Mikey Hastie, come on, Celtic, pretty much the team I would have gone with. Not surprised to see Cal Mack on the bench after listening to Brendan's presser on Friday. Yes, that was the feeling I had after listening to Brendan on the Friday presser. John McVeigh, it is 4:43 p.m. in Thailand. Kickoff 6 p.m. Might watch a live stream here in Hua Hin or go to the pub to watch. Yeah, actually, he's asking the audience what he should do. Should he stay where he is and watch it, or go to the boozer? Let us know in the comments section, because Jungle Lion's already made his decision early. He's sneaking out to the boozer in O'Connell Street. Well, you enjoy yourself, Jungle Lion. Hopefully you can join us maybe for the tail end of the post-match, and you'll be in good spirits at that stage as well. John Taggart, can't wait for this game. 7 p.m. here in Perth, Australia. Come on the hoops. John, you do know there was a Celtic player called John Taggart back in the 1960s and the 70s. Is it one and the same? Let us know. Morning, Acsom, Magnet 67 again. From a breezy Scotland this time. Today we dare to win. Yeah, there has been trampolines blowing all over the shop through here, Kev. I don't know what the weather's like in Budapest, but there's been a wee storm kicking off in here. Which
I don't know. It's glorious spring sunshine here. Not to rub it in too much.
Rub it in. Yeah, so much so that Paddy, we had to reorganise Paddy's departure from Edinburgh the other night because of the storm. And one thing sprung to mind, I was talking about players who like to sneak into a specific room at Seymour Hydro for a wee smoke. He was telling us that the guys in the Celtic dressing room who would have a wee smoke at half time, Kev, there was a couple of players that he mentioned. Who do you think they were? Who would go into the cubicle for a wee puff at half time? Who am I throwing under the bus here?
I know Henrik used to like a smoke, but
he did,
I know it's not the same.
I'll give you one of them. Arthur Boric was one of them, right?
Oh, that's an obvious one. Should have got that one.
Right, but who used to join Arthur in the cubicle for a smoke at half time? There's a question. Let us know in the comments.
I'm going to say Paul Hartley. Don't know why.
Because he's your doppelganger, perhaps? No, it's
Maybe.
not. It's not Paul Hartley, I've got to say. Personal Jesus. An early goal to them could prove fatal for the league. Now, you've just been talking about that, Kev. Need Joe Hart at his absolute best for the potentially final derby of his entire career. Well, he's got another one coming up. But
that one, surely. Maybe another two, as well.
Potentially. Well, we're talking about gaffers and the kind of approach. Now, we know that the kind of relationship we've had with Brendan Rodgers, second time in charge of Celtic. And when he came to the club at the beginning of this season, Kev, I wouldn't say it was universally accepted. And there are certain people, even in the Acsom team, who have got it in their mind, Brendan, bad, and it's like, you're going to have to entertain us, you're going to have to prove yourself. And then you've got the other side of the argument, who, like myself, who thought that Brendan was the best candidate for the job from the names who were linked with the job at the time. And I know there's always one or two sometimes that you find out later on were in the running, Kev. But from those who were apparently considered for the Celtic job, for me, Brendan Rodgers was the best candidate. And but it's been a topsy-turvy season in many ways. We're sitting top of the league, of course. They've got a game in hand. We've got a great opportunity today to turn the screw in relation to that. People go on about us going 8 points clear after a 2-1 win at Celtic Park. Brendan's always quick to point out that they had 2 games in hand at that stage, and he never ever considered it to be 8 points. However, the season has gone up and down, and I remember the initial introduction where it was obviously a section of the fan base didn't want him back. And then he started to win a lot of people over. And there was that wee period of time where he saves the wee pitch invader. Everybody's gone, oh, hail Brendan, he's back. We beat Rangers at Ibrox, which was huge, absolutely huge. And then there's the video footage of him driving away to Celtic Park with the shades on, just looking like peak Brendan, giving it all that out the window. And then, of course, in October, he comes to the St. Roch's game and just nonchalantly walks across the park. And everybody's gone, this man is back. But since then, he's been booed. He's been booed at Celtic Park after some particularly poor performances, and people are criticising him for throwing away this lead. I think we're in the midst, though, Kev, of a period of wins, actually, that, only one little blot in that copybook being the Tynecastle defeat, which there were other circumstances at play. And I think we're in the best place we've been in terms of players coming back, putting a run together, building up that magical word momentum. I think we're in the best place we've been all season.
You might not be far off with that comment, actually. Which I don't know, sounds a bit bizarre, but I think it's true. I think with Rodgers, when he came back this time around, I was in the camp of I didn't want him back, and we've said this before. There's a blog on Acsom.net which says as much. I didn't want him within 100 miles of Celtic Park because of the way that he left us, and I've never gotten over that. Again, it's another JFK moment. Where were you when Rodgers announced he was leaving? I was sitting at work all depressed because I couldn't believe it. I just didn't think it was going to happen, and the way that he'd left us in the lurch, really. But from coming back, yes, if you look at it from that kind of logical mindset of it, he probably was the best of the candidates. You can look with hindsight and 2020 vision and say, is it the guys at Fariola that went to Lille, has had a great time there? He would have been a great coach for us. Maresca could have been great for us. But you only say that because they've gone and done well. If they'd failed elsewhere, you wouldn't have them back in the discussion again. So yeah, I think Rodgers coming back this time, it was different. He didn't come with the same kind of razzmatazz, the same ego that he had when he first came after his spells at Liverpool. He's a bit more subdued, and I think it's taken him a while to get going, to be fair. But every time we've come up to a big game so far this season, touchwood and all that, he's got the team really prepared and ready for it. And they've had that Brendan Rodgers swagger of old when it's coming to the big games. We used to talk about Ange as his teams would get progressively better as the season goes on, and then they would finish really strong. We don't speak about that with Brendan's teams, but if you look at the results that we've had recently, it is one defeat in, was it 11, 12 games, something like that in the league. That defeat at Tynecastle came because of, let's be honest, refereeing decisions of VAR decisions that went against us, that unduly influenced the game against us. Otherwise, we could have easily won that game, I think, or at least not lost it. So over the course of the last couple of months, I think we have kind of slowly just been gaining momentum. We've been winning games. We've at times ground them out. At other times, we've gone and put 6 and 7 past teams. So now we're at this point of the season. It's a massive game. We're on a winning run. We've got Carter Vickers back. We've got Joe Hart in pretty solid form. You've got O'Reilly's beginning to pick up again. Hatate's back from injury. Kyogo's scoring goals. He's not fully fit yet, but Callum McGregor's back for the running. There's a lot of positives. There's a lot of things that could make this game thinking we're ready for it. And so, yeah, again, this is what makes you think there's nothing to fear right now, except in the fear itself of this game. We can go in and with Rodgers in charge, I think you have got a manager that, as I've just said, could be brilliant at making this game really boring and killing it and taking the wind at a Rangers sails early on and then hitting them on the break and getting us a 1-0 or a 2-1, sneak the game by a goal. That's another 3 points. And it's a massive 3 points. With them having that game in hand as well, the lead wouldn't be 5 points. It would still really just be the 2, but it'd be more secure than anything else. And yeah, I think Rodgers 2.0 is different from the first version, but I think he's still a winner, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it has been different. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we know some of the stuff that's been happening in the background with regards to recruitment. I mean, it's not something that's a conspiracy. The guy that was at the head of recruitment's no longer in a job. That didn't work. Brendan's clearly not happy with some of the guys because he's already shipped them out, and some of the others he's just no playing. So all these things have been happening in the background. But like you say, when we've come up against certainly the 2 games against Rangers, we've been able to negotiate our way through them. And I think that in Europe, I read recently a pundit called Celtic's performances in Europe this season embarrassing, and I think that's harsh. I think it's easy to do that. It's easy to just say, "Oh, we're rubbish in Europe." But if you were to look at the European campaign in its entirety, Kev, we were absolutely hammered in Madrid. Okay, we were well beaten in Madrid. We know there was a sending off early in that game, which made it particularly difficult. You look at the game in Feyenoord, 2 sendings off, Kev. You don't come back from that at the top level. You just don't come back from it. You can't play with 9 men. So I don't think it was embarrassing. I think that there were real kind of green shoots, particularly at home, when you consider that we got that 2-each draw against Atletico Madrid when we were ahead. The Lazio defeat, we were a whisker away from going on 2-1 up in that game. We were a bootlace away from going 2-1 up. And of course, we got the win against Feyenoord. So in the big games, on the big occasion, I think Brendan Rodgers comes into his own. And when you're looking and listening actually to his press conferences, I can see a Brendan Rodgers that's very respectful. I mean, even when the press are looking for a soundbite or a headline, Kev, on the John Beaton appointment, Brendan comes out and plays the game. He comes out and plays the game. I don't know what he's saying behind the curtain, of course, but he says, "Oh, John Beaton's one of the best referees in this country," and it's class. It's just like, this is a guy that's so finely tuned. He knows exactly how to deal with these types of low bowlers. And on the flip side, you've got another team's manager going on about Kyogo's form this season. You think, all right, mate, that's one way to approach this game. I prefer Brendan Rodgers' approach, which is just basically show respect at all times, Kev, even if behind the scenes, what you're saying to your team and your men as they go into the park is completely different. You just need to give them sometimes stock answers,
Exactly. It's like coming off a defeat in a game, you will back the players publicly, or after the Feyenoord game where home gets sent off for two kind of stupid challenges within the space of 5 minutes, you'll maybe back him publicly and say it's youth, it's an experience, we're working it, blah, blah, blah. Behind the doors, closed doors, you can go through them, tear him a new one. But publicly, you present a different face. And that's exactly what he's done here today or during the week with the comments on beating. The press have thought they've been really smart, probably. They've laid the bait, they've set the trap. He's going to say something inflammatory here, and he's to shut it down completely. Now, not to get carried away with it or get Labour on the point or whatever, but if you do choose the manager from the other side of the city with the way that he's been answering questions, flip that scenario. If he's asked the question, there's Beaton's in charge and he's given a few dodgy decisions against you recently. How do you feel? He's jumping on that. I mean, he's got Willie Collum banned from refereeing Rangers games, which is outrageous. But he's jumping on that because he's too much led by the emotion of things. Which again, I'm sorry, is why if Brendan can do his XB, his X boringness to the max today, he'll stay calm throughout the 90 minutes. I'm sure of that. The longer it goes on, if it at 0-0 or with us still really in the game, Clement will probably react emotionally to the game, whereas Rodgers will just react to the game, and that could be the difference between this game, the reaction of the two managers.
You know what's interesting about what you said there, right? You'll remember the 2-1 game at Celtic Park where Clement comes out and he says a few things and you're thinking, that is emotion, driven responses that he's given there. Yeah. We've been critical at times. We've been critical of Rodgers at times for seeming subdued after the game. And only one time, I think, he's let the emotions come out, and that was obviously at Tynecastle. But sometimes we've actually criticised Rodgers for keeping everything internal. And maybe we should be looking at that going, you know what, he's just giving them stock answers because he's got an issue in the dressing room or he's got something he needs to deal with here. And he's not doing the Clement thing where everything's out there and he's basically just moaning constantly after a game.
Yeah, but we want that. We want to see Brendan giving sometimes that emotional response because we're fans and we're emotional. And we come on here after the games and it's so tough at times to not give a knee-jerk reaction, to not be really emotional about what you've just seen one way or the other. And we have criticised Brendan for it, but maybe he's got it right. And maybe he picks and chooses his times wisely to let it go and to let it out. Because again, if you look at that after the 2-1 game, what was Clement's arguments against it? We had more shots, we had better XG, we had more this, we had more that. But Celtic had the game won by that point. Like, it's emotional responses. It's a responses designed to, I don't know, get a reaction from your own fans. The world's against us kind of thing.
Aye, yep.
Brendan's come out and he said, look, we've just played a game of football and we've won it. We've got the 3 points and that's all that matters. And this is where, again, I'm sorry, I'm just labouring on this fact because I really love the fact that you've called it XB now. If we can do this XB brilliantly today like we have done in the past, Brendan can come out with the most stock answer he wants about how dull the football was. We've got the 3 points. I couldn't care less.
No, that's all that matters, absolutely. Now, we're going to be talking about some of the challenges on the park, but before we do that, here's some comments. Ian Roy was commenting this morning at UK time 02:02 a.m. It was 9 p.m. in Florida, of course. He was in a wee chat with Ewan Boy Martin, and Ian was saying he doesn't think he's going to be sleeping much. Ewan, of course, comes in. It's 28 years ago on this day that Ewan's daughter was born, and we lost 2-1 to the now dead Rangers, just to get that kind of stuck into them there. Ewan, I see that, which ruined the day. So it's my revenge today to beat this new goal. Come on, you boys in green. And Stephen Kennedy reckons that Samaras liked a wee puff. I think that did that not come from Charlie Mulgrew? Didn't he say that Samaras sometimes smelt like a packet of Benson and Hedges? Anyway, I'm going to put
I really hope not. I really hope not. Because Samaras is so up here for me that this would just bring him down a wee level if I knew that about him.
He could get away with it. He's just a genius.
Probably could. Eyes.
The player that liked to join Boruc in the cubicle at halftime for a wee smoke was Massimo Donati. Massimo Donati. There you go. Paul Campbell watching live from Granada today, boys. Come on, Oops. 100%. And chill pill. Starting to get the nerves kicking in now, Kev. There's quite a few of them saying that as well. James Daly, let the Rangers fans shame themselves in front of a global TV audience. When we win, there will be carnage. Well, there is that. You know, when they're talking about the ticket allocation, Kev, for example, and coming to some kind of agreement, I actually still think it's a wee bit ambiguous when you look at the wording of around 5%. But we'll see how that transpires next season. You can think that you're doing yourself a favour by banning Celtic fans, or offering them so little tickets, so few tickets that you're putting Celtic in a situation where we refuse to take the couple of hundred that you offer us, because you've got a full stadium full of Rangers fans. That can work against you, Kev. If we get that early goal, if a couple of decisions go against them, which is highly unlikely, and we're in control of the game, though, the atmosphere in that stadium can turn and it can get very toxic.
Yeah, in fact, I think we saw that in one of the games at Celtic Park. I'm not going to say the atmosphere turned or got toxic, but there's been a couple of these lockout games where we've not been at our best at home, and it's really affected us, and the fans have felt it, and they've kind of started to get on the players when they've missed a touch or missed a pass. Fortunately, we managed to rectify and come through them all. But you can definitely see that it works both ways. Yeah, get an early goal and the place is bouncing, it's rocking, and like I said, we're in for a long afternoon, potentially. Keep it quiet, nullify them, and they will turn. I mean, they've done it so many times this season and in the past. Even look at the first game of the season. They've got 2 disallowed goals, I think, in the first 15 minutes. Both of them legitimately disallowed, but 2 disallowed goals. For me, I would think that means my team's in the ascendancy and we're on top, and I'm going to be giving it everything I've got to get them going, because the next goal counts, and third time's a charm. If you watch that game back, I'm pretty sure they turn after the second goal gets disallowed, and their team's done nothing wrong up to that point, but they still start to turn on them. So it really does make a difference. It really can make such a big difference if we can turn. Was it 48,000 people against a team?
Mm-hmm.
It's as good as having 5,000 of our own fans in there cheering us on. It would make such a big difference. And I think the point on that allocation for next season of the around 5% is probably because of the different capacities of the 2 stadiums, because we can't give them 5% of Celtic Park and be giving away more seats than they would allocate to us. It's not our fault that we've got the bigger stadium with the more fans that will fill it. So I'll get that little dig in there. But yeah, it's massive today. To keep their fans quiet is one of the biggest things that we can do. We've got the players, I think, that can control and dictate the game.
Kev, you have frozen just at that moment where you were going to give us your prediction, 1,600 strong, on the live stream. Let us know what you think is going to happen in terms of your predictions today. You're back, Kev. You're back. You're moving. You're moving.
I'm back. Yes.
The Paul Hartley doppelganger is back. There we go.
I was talking gibberish there anyway, so it doesn't matter.
No, you're making some fantastic points. It's been a very quick hour. We've got about 6 minutes left before kickoff. And what I want to do quickly is just to look at the fact, obviously, if you look at that starting 11 there, Joe Hart, Alistair Johnston, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Liam Scales and Greg Taylor. And just really look at who they're going to be up against. I know that their shape is a slightly different shape from our own as well. But the Rangers side is Butland, Tavernier, Goldson, Suter, Sterling, Diamandi, Lundstrom, Wright, Lawrence, Fabio Silva, and Dessers. So you're looking at kind of head-to-heads, where it's going to be won and lost. And I think that, a lot of people going about the midfield, flooding the midfield, Kev, and Johnston and Taylor are absolutely key to us winning that midfield battle, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It sounds strange, I think, and also in a way to say that your 2 fullbacks could be key to winning the midfield, because normally you think your fullbacks has been kind of up and down the lines, but obviously the way we play with the inverted fullbacks, they are key, because they'll come in and they'll make it almost a 2 at the back with Carter-Vickers and Scales. Then you've got the 3 in the midfield now Iwata, Johnson, Taylor, with O'Reilly and Hatate sitting in front. So it gives us more bodies in there, and we will be able to hopefully get a bit of a stranglehold in there. Looking at who they've got in that space, it's the Wright, Lawrence, and Fabio Silva. I mean, to be fair, I think I would fancy our midfield with that, with the added bonus of the inventory players in there to come out on top there. Where I have a little concern probably is the two behind them, Diomande and Lundstrom, because they're both really kind of physical players, and I haven't seen much of Diomande playing, but by all accounts he seems to be a very good football player as well. We're kind of physical but also technically skillful. So he's probably the one we'll need to watch the most, even though he's a wee bit deeper. But I don't know. Listen, we went there earlier on in the season with a back line of Johnson, Lagerbielke, Scales, Taylor. We ended with Ralston, Lagerbielke, Scales, and Bernabe, and we kept a clean sheet.
That's key.
Yeah, so there's nothing to fear. This is not me saying that we're definitely going to win this game and it's going to be a cakewalk or anything like that, but there's nothing to fear. Really,
No.
there's not.
No, you're right. And CCV has not started the game against Rangers this season. I think that's massive. He's captain in the side today. He gives you a real assurance throughout the entire side, Kev. But to be fair, when I'm looking at that defence, and there might be differing opinions on this one, I think that's our strongest defence. There's no way I'm going to sit here and say, right, drop Liam Scales for Nawrocki, because we've not seen enough of the guy. Just simply because he's a £4.3 million centre-half doesn't mean he's better than Liam Scales. And I don't think he's shown enough over a long enough period of time to merit a starting position in this particular team. He's in there, he's on the bench, of course. You've also got Stephen Welsh on the bench, and I think that the reason we've got two centre-halves is because Liam Scales, who starts today, is your backup left-back. So if you do need to make a couple of changes in there, that's the reason why there's two centre-halves on the bench. But when I look at the bench, actually, Kevin, you're looking at the likes of Ida, who's not done much wrong, Yang, whose only crime was to get sent off, and that's why he lost his jersey, and Bernardo. You've also got players who can positively affect his game should he be required at any point.
Yeah, last season for so long, I think we spoke about the strength from the bench that we had, and that was seeing us through games. We were making changes on the 60 or 70 minute mark, and we could change the entire front three or midfield and get fresh impetus into the game. For so long this season, we've just not been able to do that. You've looked at the bench and you've at times and you've gone, well, where's the game changer? If we need somebody, who are we bringing on? There was no one there. Now you look at it, you've got your captain, club captain, to come off the bench if we need him. You've got James Forrest, one of the most experienced players in this fixture, to come off the bench and see us through if we need it. You've got Bernardo, who's a Portuguese under-21 captain, just scored last weekend. You've got Ida, who's got 5 goals and 8 appearances for us this season. He's a goal threat. And you've got Yang, who, if it wasn't for, I'm going to say, an erroneous call by VAR to give him a sending off, and the referee had called it as a yellow, because as Alan's pointed out, that was, what was it? That's a purely subjective call from the referee. It's either a red or a yellow, and the ref's gone, it's a yellow. It's not an obvious error. So he shouldn't have been sent off in that game. But that's the only reason why he's not there, which has allowed Kuhn to come on and play so well in the last few games. But we've now got options here that we've just not had before, which again is the other reason why I don't have a great amount of fear at the moment going into this one. Because I think if it's going wrong, we've got the options that can hopefully come on and plug the gaps where it is going wrong. And if it's going right, we've got the players on the bench who can come on and really hammer home the advantage that we've hopefully got in the game.
Now, 1,600 plus live on the pre-match stream today. I've got to thank every single one of you from all over the globe for tuning in. I know that a lot of people have the game somewhere else on a screen, and you mute it because you want to listen to a couple of Celtic fans talking about Celtic prior to these games and every game. And it's incredible. I don't know what the mentality or the psychology is around some Rangers fans who wake up on match day, Kev. What's it they get? They get the battle fever. They get the battle fever, right? And they get up and they look at the back and they look at that flag mast and they look at the Union Jack and they start getting pumped up. Then they switch on Acsom. That's what they do. They switch on Acsom. I'll see you in the comments. We'll see if you come back at full time, shall we? Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Let us know your comments on everything we have discussed. Enjoy the game and come back and join us at half-time for a Celtic State of Mind.
Nice one.